I'm David Krapf, editor-in-chief of WorkBoat Magazine and WorkBoat.com, and we are at the WorkBoat Executive Summit on the day before the WorkBoat show opens. And I'm with Michael Mandelbaum, who is our keynote speaker at the Executive Summit. And real quickly, of course, Mike, I don't want to take up the introduction for the whole day, but he is the Christian A. Herter Professor of American Foreign Policy at Johns Hopkins University, their School of Advanced International Studies in Washington, D.C., which I said, and he is the most powerful man in the United States. But I stole that, of course, from John Stewart. We're going to ask him a couple of questions that are related to his recent book, which is That Used to Be Us, which he co-authored with Thomas Friedman of the New York Times. So, the first question, well, all of them hopefully relate to our industry, and the one thing is you talk about infrastructure and how we have to make the investments in infrastructure. So why don't you talk about why we need to do that so badly?
Well, infrastructure is historically a key to our economic growth, going all the way back to the building of the Erie Canal at the outset of the 19th century. And throughout American history, we built the best canals, the best roads, bridges, tunnels, highways, and superhighways, and that is the necessary framework for productive economic activity. But in every generation, we've had to upgrade our infrastructure to keep up with technology and to keep up with the evolution of our economy, and we're not doing that now. According to one study, we are $2.2 trillion in arrears in upgrading our infrastructure, and if we don't upgrade our infrastructure, we won't have the economic growth we need, and if we don't have economic growth, we won't have anything else we need. So infrastructure and investing in it is key to the American future.
Now, also, Michael, another point in the book which relates to our industry is about energy policy and energy consumption. And I know you want to, hopefully, we'll bend the curve and gradually, not phase out, but gradually go down the use of fossil fuels, which is big in our industry. So briefly, how do you explain your policy on using all-inclusive policy, including fossil fuels?
Well, global warming is real, and the reliance on imported fuel has foreign policy consequences that are negative. So we have an interest in relying less on fossil fuels. Now, we're not going to be able to get rid of fossil fuels in the lifetime of anybody now alive on the planet. They're just too important. But we can bend the curve downward, and the way to do that, I believe, is to have an energy tax, to have a carbon tax. That will make energy more expensive. It should be phased in gradually. But if you raise the price of something, you get less of it. And we'll have less consumption of fossil fuels. Not zero consumption, but less. I think that as we impose a carbon tax, we also ought to go all out with exploration. We ought to drill everywhere we safely can. We ought to frack everywhere we safely can. We ought to strive to become self-sufficient in fossil fuel. But we ought to do that in the context of an energy tax, which would help us bend the curve of usage and get at some point, generations from now, not immediately, to a point where we don't have to rely on fossil fuel.
Well, it should make some in our industry happy for a little while. But
well,
while they're still alive.
We cannot do without coal. Right. We cannot do without oil. We cannot do without natural gas, and unfortunately, we cannot do without coal, which is the dirtiest fuel. And it's not just us. Even if we were to stop using coal tomorrow, the Chinese and the Indians would use lots of it, which means that the only way to get off coal is with technological innovation. That innovation is not going to come from China. It's going to have to come from the United States. But the way you get innovation is with economic incentives. And raising the price of fossil fuel would give an incentive to explore and invest in non-fossil fuels.
Now, our last question here, our third question, also relates to our industry and the country nationwide, is training, getting skilled workers to take some of these positions. In our industry, it's welders, ship fitters. They don't necessarily need a college diploma for that, but those jobs pay a lot of money, $70,000, $80,000. You can go overtime, make six figures at some of these yards. So how do we fill that gap, not only in our industry, but I guess nationwide?
Well, first, we have to recognize that there are good jobs out there that are not being filled, and they're not being filled because people don't have the skills, so we need to reconfigure our system of education to give people those skills. We have to concentrate more, I think, at the community college level on technical training. But we also have to make sure that everybody gets a good high school education, because the jobs of the future in shipyards are not going to be non-skill, low-tech jobs. You're going to have real technological sophistication to work in a boatyard of the future, and you're going to need to get the basis for that sophistication in high school, and then you're going to have to be able to go to a place that'll give you the technical training you need, most probably in a community college.
Well, thank you, Michael. That was our third question, and that wraps up today from the Executive Summit, and we'll bring you more from the WorkBoat Show.